The street was silent, like a breath being held. Late morning sun filtered through the trees lining the cul-de-sac, their branches casting soft, moving shadows across the sidewalks. A delivery truck hummed away in the distance, leaving behind the scent of warm asphalt and a quiet kind of anticipation. Leah Monroe checked her phone again, squinting. "For 13, Willow Lane," she murmured, brushing a strand of chestnut hair from her cheek. She tapped her screen. "This is it, right?" She looked up at the modest white house in front of her. A small porch. Potted lavender at the edge of the stairs. The number 413 painted in fading black beside the mailbox. This was the place. In her arms, she carried a medium-sized box wrapped in brown paper, tied off with a green satin ribbon. It wasn't much, just a silly collection of her best friend Emily's favorite things, snacks, a candle, a Polaroid they took in college, and a tiny stuffed sloth. The plan had been simple. Deliver it in person. Surprise Emily. Hug. Laugh. Go grab lunch. But fate doesn't run on maps. She knocked once. Then again. The door opened slower than she expected. And there he stood. A man, not Emily. Definitely not Emily. He was barefoot. Tousled dark brown hair. A grey t-shirt, slightly wrinkled like he'd slept in it. His hazel eyes blinked against the sunlight, sharp yet distant, as if she'd pulled him out of a dream he didn't want to be in. Leah froze mid-sentence. "Oh. I'm so sorry, I think I've got the wrong." Her words trailed off as he just stared at her. Not in a rude way. Just if like she wasn't supposed to be there, but he wasn't quite sure if she should leave either. She held the box awkwardly between them. "This isn't Emily's house, is it?" He finally spoke, voice low, slightly hoarse like he hadn't used it much lately. "No. Emily doesn't live here." "Oh wow. Okay. Sorry about that. I must have messed up the address. That's so embarrassing." She laughed nervously, beginning to step back. But he didn't close the door. His eyes dropped to the package. "Is it a birthday gift?" he asked, surprising even himself with the question. She looked down at it, then smiled. "Yeah. Homemade disaster of a birthday surprise. I made a playlist and everything. Thought I'd be cute." He gave a dry chuckle. "Well, you're definitely early, or late." She tilted her head. "You're not going to slam the door in my face." He shrugged. "You're the first knock in 3 weeks. Feels rude to waste it." Leah stood there, unsure what to do. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. Just unfamiliar. "You sure you don't know Emily Jennings?" "About 5'2", short hair, very bossy, smells like vanilla body mist." "Nope. But she sounds fun." "She's impossible," Leah replied with a fond smile. "The best kind of impossible." For a long beat, neither of them spoke. Then, finally, he opened the door a little wider. "You want a glass of water before you head back out? It's hot." She hesitated. "Stranger. Wrong house. Social rulebook says, say no, walk away." But there was something about him. The way he hadn't smiled completely. The way his voice was careful, like someone who'd once said too much and got hurt for it. She nodded. "Sure. Just one glass. And maybe directions." He stepped aside, and she entered. Inside the house, it smelled like old books and something faintly smoky, maybe burnt coffee or a forgotten candle. As she crossed the threshold, she didn't know it yet. But this would be the most important knock she ever made. The door clicked softly behind her. Leah stepped into a living room that felt like it hadn't changed in years, timeless, but not in the fashionable way. Bookshelves filled with worn paperbacks lined one wall. A dusty record player sat in the corner, silent. The furniture was a mix of soft beige and faded blue, nothing new, nothing loud. The kind of place that once felt lived in, but lately only remembered what it was like to feel alive. Ethan walked ahead of her, quietly. He motioned to the couch. "You can sit. I'll get you that water." She nodded, lowering herself onto the edge of the cushion like someone stepping into someone else's dream. Her eyes scanned the space, half-finished mugs of tea, a sweater draped over a chair, a framed photo turned face down on the mantel. There was a stillness to the room. Not peaceful. Just paused. He returned with 2 glasses. "Ice okay?" She laughed lightly. "After the sun out there? Ice is divine." He handed her the glass, their fingers almost brushing. For a second, their eyes met. But neither held the gaze for long. She sipped slowly. "You a teacher or something?" He arched a brow. "Why?" She gestured at the shelves. "That's not a casual book collection. That's a commitment. Or a coping mechanism." He smirked slightly, the corner of his mouth twitching up. "Both. I used to teach English. High school." "What changed?" His gaze dropped to the rim of his glass. "My wife passed 3 years ago," he said simply. Leah blinked. "Oh. I'm so sorry." He nodded, like he'd heard it before. "Cancer. Quick. Unfairly quick." Like she skipped the warning signs and went straight to goodbye. Silence again. Not the awkward kind. The reverent kind. Leah placed her glass down gently. "Funny," she said, softly. "I didn't knock on your door for a reason. But maybe there's a reason I knocked on yours." Ethan looked at her then, really looked. "What about you?" he asked. "What's a woman like you doing running surprise errands with handmade playlists?" She laughed. "I needed to feel useful. My work's been remote, my apartment feels like a shoe box, and I haven't seen Emily in weeks. She's the one person who knows when I'm spiraling." He tilted his head. "Are you spiraling?" She shrugged. "Maybe. Not dramatically. Just quietly." He smiled, but it was more sad than amused. "I know that one." She leaned back, finally letting her shoulders drop. "You know," she said, "when I first saw you open that door, you looked like someone who didn't expect the world to come knocking." He chuckled dryly. "That's fair. I've spent so long trying to disappear, I forgot how to answer." A pause. Then, gently, "You're not invisible," she said. "You're just not ready." He stared at her. And for the first time in years, something in him, something long buried beneath grief, stirred. He stood. "Come with me." She blinked. "Where?" "To the porch. There's better light." The porch creaked gently beneath their steps as Ethan opened the screen door and let Leah through. She stepped outside and exhaled, a long breath, like she'd been holding it all morning. The porch overlooked a sleepy street framed by overgrown hedges and trees that had forgotten how to bloom fully. Everything had that soft, golden haze of early summer. Quiet, but not dead. There were two mismatched chairs and a small table between them. One held a half-empty ashtray. The other had a folded blanket on its armrest, untouched in years. He gestured. Take whichever one's less likely to collapse. She smiled and picked the one with the blanket. Saturday. Crossed her legs casually, the breeze lifting her wavy chestnut strands as sunlight flickered through them like fire. The way she tilted her head, the way she scanned the yard like it had secrets, it made Ethan see his porch differently. Like maybe it wasn't just where things ended. He sat across from her, leaned back, and let out a sigh that had been living in his chest for days. For a while, they didn't speak. And it wasn't uncomfortable. Just two people being in the same silence without needing to fill it. Then she spoke. You ever feel like some days are stitched together by ghosts? He looked at her. She wasn't being poetic. She was being honest. Yeah, he said. Especially on Tuesdays. My wife died on a Tuesday. Leah nodded slowly. My father died on a Thursday, she offered. Close enough, he said, and they both chuckled softly. She pulled her knees up, hugging them slightly. I'm not good at relationships, she said. He raised an eyebrow. I don't think anyone is. We just get better at pretending. No, she said, shaking her head. I mean, I bail. When things get too quiet, I panic. When they get too good, I wait for them to end. Ethan watched her carefully. And yet here you are, he said. On a stranger's porch, drinking water and telling truths. She smirked. The irony isn't lost on me. He leaned forward, elbows on knees. You know what hurts most about loss? He asked. She tilted her head. It's not the emptiness, he continued. It's the memory of the fullness. Waking up and expecting laughter, a touch, a voice. And instead, silence. A bird chirped somewhere in the tree above them. Leah's lips parted, but she said nothing. She just nodded. I used to play music, Ethan said after a beat. Guitar. Piano. Wrote songs. But when she died, the notes stopped making sense. Leah's eyes widened. You were a songwriter. He nodded. Was. Maybe still am. Haven't touched a string in 3 years. She looked down. My father was a jazz trumpeter. Played barefoot. Said it helped him feel the rhythm through the floorboards. I think that's the only memory of him I've never stopped playing on repeat. He smiled faintly. Maybe we're both haunted by melody. A breeze picked up. It carried the scent of honeysuckle and dust. She stood up suddenly and walked to the porch railing. Looked out. You should play again, she said softly. Even if it hurts. I don't know how to, he replied honestly. Not anymore. I'm afraid of what might come out. She turned to face him. Then let it come. Even if it's broken. Especially if it's broken. He stared at her like someone realizing a stranger had just translated his pain into language. And for a flicker of a moment, he felt like breathing deeper. The door creaked again as they stepped back inside. But this time, the room felt different. Maybe it was the way the light caught the dust in the air. Or how Leah's presence had softened the corners of the furniture somehow, like she belonged in the spaces between the quiet. Ethan placed her glass down on the coffee table. She wandered to the bookshelf, fingers trailing the spines. Old poetry. Music theory. A few with yellowed pages and torn covers. You really lived inside words, didn't you? She asked, half smiling. I used to think they could save me, he said from behind her. She turned. And now? He shrugged. Now I think sometimes silence is the only honest thing left. Her gaze shifted past him, to the corner of the room. A guitar. Dusty. Resting on a stand. Untouched but waiting. She walked toward it without asking. Knelt beside it like she was meeting someone asleep. She didn't reach for it. Just looked at him. Do you want to? She asked softly. Ethan didn't answer right away. He moved slowly. Like his bones remembered the weight of it before his mind gave permission. He crouched down and picked it up. His fingers wrapped around the neck like old friends reuniting after a betrayal. He Saturday. Strummed once. Out of tune. Rough. But it made a sound. And Leah's lips parted, not to speak, but to feel. Ethan adjusted a peg. Then another. Closed his eyes. A slow progression emerged. A few quiet chords. Hesitant. Then a small riff. Barely there. Leah sat opposite him, not moving. Not wanting to break it. The music wasn't polished. It wobbled. Like grief learning to walk again. But it was real. I used to play for her every morning, Ethan said, voice quiet. Even when she was too sick to speak. It was the only thing that made her smile at the end. He looked up. After she was gone, I tried once. But the sound made me fall apart. Leah leaned forward slightly. And now, she asked. He exhaled slowly. It hurts, he said. But it doesn't drown me. She smiled. And something about that smile made the room breathe differently. Like the house itself remembered something good. The last note lingered in the air like incense. Faint. Sacred. She didn't applaud. Didn't need to. The silence that followed was enough. The screen door creaked once more as they stepped out onto the back porch. This time, neither of them looked startled by the sound. The backyard stretched out behind Ethan's house like a faded photograph. Overgrown hedges wrapped around the edges. A cracked stone path led nowhere in particular. In the center stood a metal bench, half buried in ivy, and a wind chime tinkled above them, gentle, uneven, like an old lullaby. Leah walked ahead and turned around slowly, taking in the space. You don't keep it up much, she said, not judging, just noticing. Ethan followed her gaze. She used to plant sunflowers out here, he said. After she passed, I tried to grow them once. But they died halfway through summer. He paused. Felt too cruel to try again. Leah walked toward a small stone birdbath. Her fingers brushed the rim, where dust and leaves had settled. It's still beautiful, she said softly. In a way that only forgotten things can be. They sat on the metal bench, side by side. No longer strangers. Not lovers either. Just two people quietly holding their own ruins. The sky above them began to bleed orange, streaks of pink cutting across it. I used to think healing meant fixing what was broken, Ethan said after a while. Leah looked at him. And now? He sighed. Now I think healing is carrying it better. Like learning to hold the weight differently. Leah stared out toward the fence. My therapist once told me that pain doesn't shrink. We just grow around it. Ethan chuckled gently. Your therapist's smart. They fell quiet again. Not from discomfort, but from the weight of truths too tender to rush. A breeze moved through the yard. The wind chime sang again. Leah hugged her knees to her chest. I've been running, she said. From place to place. Job to job. I don't even know what I'm chasing anymore. Ethan looked at her. Maybe you're not chasing something, he said. Maybe you're just searching for somewhere your grief can breathe. Her eyes flicked to his. And in that moment, she looked younger. Or maybe just more real. I haven't felt this safe in years, she whispered. Me either, he replied. A few fireflies blinked to life in the bushes nearby. One hovered between them, lighting up briefly, then vanished into the dusk. It didn't need to be captured. It just needed to be seen. Like them. The house felt quieter now. Not because the wind had died down or the traffic had thinned, but because something between them had settled. Leah walked back inside first. Her step slower now. More thoughtful. Like the ground itself had turned sacred. Ethan followed a few paces behind, carrying 2 cups of lukewarm tea they had forgotten to drink earlier. He placed one on the coffee table. She didn't reach for it. She stood by the window, arms folded. Her silhouette caught in the glow of the porch light outside. The silence stretched between them, not awkward. Not cold. Just full. I keep thinking, she said finally, her voice a fragile thread, that maybe if I stop moving, I'll shatter. Ethan stood near the bookshelf, listening. I didn't cry when my mother passed, she continued, staring out at the dark. Not even at the funeral. People looked at me like I was heartless. Like I had already moved on. She turned slightly toward him. But I didn't move on. I just moved. Everywhere. Away. Away from the house. From the memories. From myself. Her voice cracked. And then yesterday, at the cafe, I saw a woman who looked like her. Same hair. Same coat. And I couldn't breathe. I had to leave. She swallowed hard. That's why I forgot my wallet. Ethan stepped closer, slowly, like approaching a wild animal caught in barbed wire. Leah sat down abruptly on the edge of the couch. Her hands trembled now. And then, quietly, finally, the tears came. Not loud. Not cinematic. Just slow, exhausted weeping. The kind that had been building inside her like a storm behind her ribs. Ethan didn't speak. He didn't reach to hug her. He sat on the floor beside the couch, cross-legged, facing away slightly. Not intruding. Just he there. After a long while, she whispered, I hate that no one tells you how grief feels like shame sometimes. He nodded, his voice low. Like you're doing it wrong. Or not enough. Or too much. The clock ticked on the wall. And the house held them both. I don't want to forget her, Leah said through clenched teeth. But I don't want to keep hurting either. You don't have to choose, Ethan said. She looked at him, mascara smudged, eyes raw. He met her gaze. You can remember her, and still let yourself heal. A pause. That's not betrayal, he added. That's love, learning to live differently. Leah's lips trembled into the ghost of a smile. And in that dim room, filled with sadness and softness, they weren't strangers anymore. Just 2 broken people, breaking open, not apart. Together. The sun wasn't fully up yet. But the sky had shifted from inky black to a pale, hopeful blue. You could hear the city stretching in the distance like it was waking slowly, gently. Inside the house, everything was still. Leah sat near the door, shoes on, bag in hand, her eyes watching the horizon through the open curtain. She looked calm, not fixed, not over it, but different. Like someone who had survived their own storm. Ethan stepped into the room, rubbing his eyes. His voice was still rough with sleep. "You sure you don't want breakfast?" She smiled. "If I stay longer, I might never leave." He smiled back. But there was no pressure in it. He picked up her teacup from last night, untouched, cold, and placed it in the sink. "I can drop you off," he offered. "I'll take the train," she replied, softly. "I think I need to." He nodded. Not because he agreed, but because he understood. They stood facing each other now. No music. No swelling background score. Just the subtle, invisible weight of words unspoken, the kind that don't need to be said out loud. Leah stepped forward first, wrapping her arms around him. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't platonic either. It was human. Honest. Full. He hugged her back, firm and warm. When they pulled apart, she looked up at him. "Thank you for being a soft place to land." He smiled, just barely. "Thank you for letting yourself land." She walked to the door. He didn't follow. She looked back once. "I think I'll plant something today," he said suddenly. She tilted her head. "Sunflowers." He nodded. She smiled. "Send me a picture when they bloom." And with that, she opened the door and stepped into the pale morning. The street was still empty. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel alone in it. She wasn't running. She was walking forward. And behind her, in that quiet little house, a man stood still, but lighter. Because sometimes healing isn't a miracle. Sometimes it's just someone showing up. And staying.